What's going on, everybody? Jared Sandler, happy to chat with you this morning. Opening day 2020 has finally arrived, and the Rangers and Rockies play tonight from Globe Life Field. Pregame coverage beginning at 6:30. First pitch just past 7 o'clock on 105.3 The Fan and the Texas Rangers Radio Network. I want to thank you for hanging out with me this morning, this afternoon, depending on when you're watching this. A lot to get to quickly to kind of preview the season, but first some big news, the expanded playoffs. We learned yesterday that the Players Association and the owners agreed to expand the playoff field from 10 per or 5 per league, 10 total, to 8 per league, 16 total. Basically, 3 divisions, first and second place in each division get in. That makes up for 6 of the 8 teams per league. And then it's simply a 2-team wild card draw from that point for the remaining 2 teams. So 8 teams make it per league. Remember, there are only 15 teams per league. So that means that for the first time, Major League Baseball is punching more than half the league's amounts of tickets to the playoffs. Typically baseball is maybe the hardest to get into the playoffs. Right there with the NFL. The NFL 6 of 32 or 12 of 32. Major League Baseball 10 of 30. But Major League Baseball is expanding the playoff field. I think this serves a couple of purposes. One, it helps the owners and players make some more money. And I think particularly the owners, obviously, wanting to recuperate some of that lost revenue. And perhaps their fans by the time the playoffs roll around, not sure. And then the other thing is it does add a protective layer for some of the really good teams in the event they were to get off to a little bit of a slow start. And that way maybe you make sure to have the best teams in the playoffs. If you can't make the playoffs with 8 teams per league, then all right, that's on you. And I know everyone's dealing with the same 60-game schedule, but it's conceivable that a team that would win the World Series in a 162-game season wouldn't make the playoffs in a 60-game season. So at least you have that protective element. So the first round is going to be a best of 3. So that could be interesting. Let's say, the Yankees or the Dodgers, they cruise through the regular season like some people believe they might, and then all of a sudden they drop the first playoff game. They're playing for their 2020 lives from the baseball standpoint, at least. So create some intrigue. I'm glad it's not a one and done. I think a lot of us, while I do like the added wild card team that we've seen in the past, a best out of 3 seems to be more palatable, but I understand why they don't do that in the traditional setup, but in this one, first round will be best out of 3. As far as beyond this year, and I've said on this channel before, I'm a big proponent of an expanded playoff field. I think my preference would be 6 teams per league. That way, instead of 16 out of 30, you're gonna admit 12 out of 30 into the playoffs. And a part of the reason why is if you look at Major League Baseball, one of its challenges is it's 162 games. The regular season and really the spring training, if you include that, I mean, you're giving people baseball for like 8 to 9 months if you include the postseason. That's a long time. Regular season, April, May, June, July, August, September. I mean, that's 6 months, give or take. And it's every day and it's long. And you need engagement. You need a sustained engagement. And my thought is this. The Major League Baseball regular season is about 190 days. You need to create a system that maximizes a fan base's ability to have a competitive reason for engagement. Of course, you're going to have the fans who they only watch when their team's in the playoffs. You're going to have the fans who they're going to watch no matter what, win, lose, draw, whether the team's great or they're not great. But the reality is, just as a team is able to draw more fans when they're winning, the fan engagement in general is higher when a team is winning. The competitive nature is what allows fan bases to sustain engagement once the novelty of each new season wears off. And adding that 5th playoff spot per league has allowed for maybe 2 to 3 more teams and thus their fan bases to have that competitive level of engagement through maybe the mid-September or late September. Adding a 6th playoff team per league only increases that. So now, you might have 10 fan bases that are able to engage through the final month, just from a competitive standpoint. So basically, on opening day, every fan base checks the engagement box. And then the next day, they check it. But as you get to day 50 and day 70 and day 90, day 110, how many of those teams are still checking the fan engagement box? And I think adding a team to the playoffs in each league, not oversaturating, will help that, because it will give more fan bases more of a chance to maintain that competitive engagement, if that makes sense. And as far as as far as what it means for the Rangers this year, 8 teams making the playoffs per league, it obviously helps their chances. And I think that there are situations in years past where if you were to look at the top 8 teams, there would be a losing record for a team that would make the playoffs. So that changes what we view as the record necessary to make the playoffs. And because all teams get the same challenge of a best of 3, while home field advantage is a part of this in a way, it's not like by getting the 7th seed or the 8th seed you're having to do a winner take all while everyone else gets a full series. So just getting in seems to make things really interesting. So I'm excited. I hope Rangers fans are excited. I definitely have a higher level of postseason optimism going into this year than any year since the spring training or build up to 2016. So this should be exciting for those purposes. Okay, a few things. Leody Taveras making the team, that's awesome. I don't know what his role is going to be in 2020. As far as, let me say this, I know what his role is going to be right out the gate. I don't know how it's going to evolve. Right now, he's an off-the-bench, maybe defensive replacement, maybe speed off the bases or off the bench type guy. But I do think that his growth has put him in a position where he's going to compete for the opening day center field job in 2021. And that's exciting, just 21 years old. There are a lot of questions about the lineup because there's just not a lot of track record in the lineup. That's not to say that the lineup couldn't be really good, but I understand why there are questions. I don't think it's as much about the potential. There's certain lineups you look at and they just don't have potential. I think this lineup does. I think the question with this lineup is less about the potential and more about this. It's more about the fact that you look at Danny Santana. He was awesome last year, but it's only been 1 year. You look at Nick Solak and Willie Calhoun. They've not done this over a full year. Joey Gallo, I think he's been productive. A lot of people think he's been productive for the last 3 years, but he, without question, took a big step last year, but it's only been 1 year of that. Shin-Soo Choo's the guy who maybe defies this a little bit, but, he's almost 40 years old, so, there are naturally questions with that. So I guess my point is, in juxtaposition to, say, the team the Rangers are playing tonight, with Trevor Story, Charlie Blackmon, Nolan Arenado, guys who've been consistently productive at a high level for multiple years, it's easy to look at that lineup and expect that out of them. Whether or not you're going to get it, no one ever knows. But it's easier to expect a high level of production out of those guys than it is guys who don't have that multi-year track record. So those are where the questions from the lineup really stem. And it's going to be interesting to see what we get. It's going to be a big learning year for a lot of us, even in just 60 games. What are we going to get from Willie Calhoun and Nick Solak? And is Joey going to be able to have the same type of production this year as he did last year? And what Rugi are we going to see? A lot of different questions with the lineup, and that's why I think there are people, when assessing the Rangers across the league, are a little unsure of the lineup. All right, Lance Lynn tonight gets the start. Just want to give you some Lance Lynn nuggets. He threw more four-seam fastballs than anyone else in Major League Baseball last year, but he did it for a good reason. Opposing hitters hit just 218 off of that pitch. That was 9th best in baseball. But one thing that's interesting about Lance, he had a career year, and sometimes guys who have a career year as late into their career as Lance Lynn, you look at some of the other metrics, and maybe it leads you to think it's not sustainable. And one pitching metric that is, I guess, supposed to be a good harbinger for this sort of thing, or perhaps maybe not so auspicious, is fielding independent pitching, FIP. Basically what it does is it neutralizes the impact of balls in play, with the idea that as a pitcher, a ball gets put in play, I can't control my defense. I can't control if I have a good defense, if they're positioned properly or poorly, all that stuff. So what it does is it places a high value on strikeouts. It takes the true outcomes with home runs, strikeouts, walks, and then takes the rest of the outcomes, balls in play, and neutralizes it across the league. So there's a formula that basically says, regardless if my defense is the worst and yours is the best, we're going to find a way to basically be a predictor of what that all things being equal success is. So if your FIP, which is looked at on the same scale as an ERA, if your FIP is better than your ERA, that suggests you got unlucky. That maybe the outcomes of the balls in play over the course of the year were unlucky. If you have a FIP that's higher than your ERA, that suggests that maybe what you're doing isn't sustainable year to year. You're getting lucky. Well, Lance Lynn's FIP, surprisingly, was better than his ERA. It was better by 54 points. His FIP was 316. His ERA was 370. And that difference on the favorable side for the pitcher was the 7th highest in baseball. So that seems to suggest there's more out there for Lance Lynn to achieve. I was surprised when I saw that. All right. Who's going to get lefties out? That's a question. Joe Palumbo, Colby Allard, they're the two lefties in the bullpen, but my guess is if in the 7th or 8th inning a tough lefty's up, you're going to see a guy like Edinson Volquez, maybe a guy like Nick Goody, perhaps even Jonathan Hernandez to start. I'm not sure that Palumbo and Allard necessarily represent, lefty specialist types who are really going to thrive in that role. I think they're just, two left arms who are going to hold things down until Brett Martin and Joely Rodriguez are able to rejoin the team. One thing that's going to be interesting to follow, Willie Calhoun not starting tonight. He'll be hopefully available to start tomorrow. But when he is in the lineup, while I expect Elvis Andrus to hit second tonight, will the Rangers hit Willie second? They don't have to worry about 3 straight lefties against a lefty pitcher if Danny Santana hits third because Danny's a switch hitter. I think ultimately for me the question is, if you bat second in a lineup every day versus someone who bats 7th, the player who bats second is going to not only have a greater chance to get that extra at bat, in a game, but over the course of a season accumulates more plate appearances. Who would you rather have more plate appearances, Elvis or Willie? For me, the answer is Willie. So when Willie's in the lineup, I'd be curious to see if Elvis drops down to the bottom third of the order. Finally, the Rangers play the Rockies this weekend. Nolan Arenado, Charlie Blackmon, they're both really fun players to watch. Blackmon born in Dallas, grew up in Georgia. Obviously, there's a Rangers tie with Arenado since it seems like we've been hot on bringing him to Texas the last few years, and that still could happen. But how about this? If there's a Rocky I want on the Rangers, he's available not this year, don't believe next year, but the year after, it's Trevor Story. Irving kid, still makes his offseason home here, and he has emerged as one of the best shortstops in Major League Baseball. He's going to be fun to watch this year. He's a name to follow in terms of possibility for a future Rangers union. All right, there you go. That's a little Rangers commentary from me. So excited to get this season going. Can't wait to chat with you. 6:30 start to our pregame coverage on 105.3 The Fan and the Texas Rangers Radio Network.